Give me a thumbs up. Awesome. Happy Thursday, Kubernetes family. Welcome to another wonderful community meeting. Before we start, just so everyone knows, this is recorded and streamed, and we have a code of conduct. So don't say anything you don't want, on the public record forever. Other housekeeping items, please keep yourself muted if you're not actively presenting. And also, if you're not actively editing or presenting, please don't idle in the community notes doc, because lately Google Docs has been a little slow and we need someone to be able to take notes. Speaking of, if someone would be awesome and be a note taker for this community meeting, that would be great. And be sure to put your name in the note taker field so we know who to send some swag to. As usual, we have a demo to start us off, and with us we have Gwen, and she'll be demoing the Kube Service Exporter. So Gwen, please.
Hi, thanks very much for having me here. Let me go ahead and share my screen. See if I'm doing this right. Haha, yes. All right, can everyone see my screen? Awesome. Okay. This is Kube Service Exporter, which is a tool we developed at GitHub with the aim to be able to do external load balancing on our Kubernetes clusters. We have an internal structure with multiple Kubernetes clusters, and we developed this as a way to be able to load balance across them. Kube Service Exporter does this by exporting key value pairs to an external storage. In our case, this is console. That does not mean that that will remain the only thing that we are. Sorry, I thought I turned my phone off. That doesn't mean that's going to remain the only external storage. But that's what we have for now. Kube Service Exporter is a lightweight tool written in Go, and it works as a deployment on a cluster node. So I can show you that file right here. So this is Kube Service Exporter as a deployment. It pulls from Docker image from Docker Hub. And it runs on the cluster that you specify. In this case, I'm going to change the cluster name to, no, actually I'm going to leave it at Minikube, because what I'm going to walk you through next is how that works on a cluster. So, show context. Oh, gosh. Sorry, let me pull up my thingy here. Okay. Okay, so I am now in my Minikube cluster. And it has one node, and I am in a demo namespace currently. So I'm going to go ahead and deploy, and I'm going to make a console deployment first. Let's see. Sorry. I'm switching. I can talk and type at the same time. It's always tricky. So first I'm going to deploy a console on this cluster. Great. Now, if I look at my pods, I can see I have a running console deployment. What I'm going to do next is deploy Kube Service Exporter. This is what happens when I try and type in front of people. There we go. And the next thing what I'm going to do is exec into my console pod. and see what's in there. So you can see that Kube Service Exporter exported some information about my cluster and about, so first of all, it has the node. So it says Kube Service Exporter nodes and talks about which node that is and which internal address to find it. Then it also talks about which of my Kube Service Exporter deployments has the leadership currently. Now, the really cool thing is if I now deploy a service onto this cluster, Kube Service Exporter will be able to show via annotations on that service. Actually, I can show you that file really quick. Let's show this. So this is an example of a service that you would deploy and use with Kube Service Exporter. You will add annotations to the metadata, and all of these annotations are going to be looked up by Kube Service Exporter and transformed into key values on your console storage, which can live anywhere, which I'm going to show next. So now, if I go and exec back into my console pod and look at all the key value stores, you can see, let me make this big, there we are. We have the information about our service. This is Kube Service Exporter. These are the services. This is my current namespace on my cluster. This KSE example is the name of my service, which you can see right here. This is the name of my service. This is the port, and here it will tell you which of my clusters this service has been imported from, and the name of my current cluster is Minikube. So now I made a second cluster. On Gwen's cluster, I am still in the same namespace. Currently, I'm in the community demo namespace. There's currently nothing in there. I'm going to deploy my Kube Service Exporter. And because I don't want to use up everyone's time, I'm also going to deploy my service. Actually, sorry, I think I need to change something really quick. Right, so the trick here is, in my file, I actually have to change the value of the cluster ID, because that is what gets exported to the key value storage. And so now that I'm on a different cluster, I have to change that value. Did I save? That would be silly. Excellent. Now I'm going to apply my Kube Service Exporter, and I'm also going to make the service. I'm going to deploy the exact same service that I deployed on the other cluster. What is happening? Oh no, I'm on the Kube system. Interesting. How do I change this? Config use context Gwen's cluster dash namespace equals community demo. Interesting. Did I? Okay, let's try that again.
You have 2 minutes left.
Thank you. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so I did deploy my service, and what I'm going to see is I'm going to switch around to my other cluster. See what happens there. So the service deployed okay. I don't know why my Kube Service Exporter YAML did not deploy. I'm really confused why I can't find it. But let's exec back into the pod, into the console pod. Okay, so basically because I'm running out of time and I can't debug this further, what we should be seeing here is my other cluster exporting a key value from the other cluster into this console deployment. What I wanted to show was that other clusters can can export to any console deployment anywhere. But I have no idea what went wrong with this demo currently. I'm a little bit baffled. However, I will be available for questions and help anyone show this if they are interested.
Awesome.
So, are there any questions?
Yeah, we have time for one question, if there are any. Otherwise, Gwen is on Slack and will be around. Going once, going twice. All right, thank you, Gwen. Next up, we have release updates. I believe Aaron is out, so one of his shadows is on. Mike, are you around?
I am around. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Nice. How's it going, everyone? Happy Valentine's Day. Happy Thursday for all of us single folks. Just wanted to give a few updates on where we're at with the release and what contributors can expect and what have you. So as of this week, we are, and just wave your arms at me if my internet starts going out and I'll shut off my video. But basically, we're halfway through the release. We're exactly halfway through the release this week. On Tuesday, we cut v.1.14.0 alpha 3, which went well and went off without a hitch. We have burn down beginning in 2 weeks, and 1.14 is being cut officially in 5.5 weeks, just under 6 weeks. And as far as new things that have popped up that you can take advantage of over the last week, Aaron created a shared Google Calendar for 1.14, which has all these events, it has all these days, all of the release team meetings, the Cig release meetings, and what have you, burn down meetings once those start in 2 weeks. So if you're interested in seeing how the schedule is going or participating in those meetings, for sure, get on that calendar and, add it to yours. It's really great. Other big things that are going on right now, basically last week in enhancements land was the end of the extension deadline. So as a lot of you may know, 2 weeks ago is the KEP deadline. This is kind of the first release that we're requiring KEPs for all new enhancements that make it into the release. So there was a bit of an extension time period as well for things that were in flight but didn't quite make it just yet. That ended last week. So right now, the enhancements team, which is led by Claire, is working through all of that, making sure that all of the extensions are in and annotated in the way in which they're annotated. So if you have a KEP that you need an extension for and you haven't gotten one yet, it may be too late, but you should for sure talk to Claire and get that settled. So, just FYI, make sure your enhancements are in check. And if you're interested in the logistical aspects of a release, then go to github.com/Kubernetes/enhancements. This is where the KEPs live. And go to issues, go to the milestones, and look at the 1.14 milestone. there's about 3 KEPs that are in that milestone, and for each of them, oops, I'm gonna shut off my video. Sorry, guys. But for each of the KEPs, you can see a number of things, and depending on your perspective, whether you're more interested in the enhancement itself, CI, the documentation, the release notes, or what have you. But feel free to go through those, look through the graduation criteria, the testing checklist, and what have you. And that's always just a helpful way for everyone to be spending their time, making sure that those things are well articulated and contributing better graduation criteria and checklists if you can. As far as CI signal goes, Maria, the CI signal lead, is working with a few SIGs to clear up a few bugs that have popped up in CI from, I believe, Cig Network and Cig Cluster Lifecycle, but that's in progress. If you're a part of those SIGs, be sure to help out there if you can. Bug triage is looking good. Test infrastructure, we had 113 PRs merged last week, and the PRs went up for the 114 CI jobs, as well as new tooling to automatically create the CI jobs for future releases. So that's great. Kudos to the test infra folks for this release. We did have Prow and GitHub outages last week, but that's life in ops land. Sometimes there are outages. And other than that, docs and release notes are working together to kind of sync up on formats for the release notes, as well as blog topics and what have you. So that's all moving along swimmingly. And like I said, there's still 2 more weeks of active development that's going to go into this release at least. So, a lot of stuff that's going to be documented, have release notes for it, and have blogs about it is still TBD. So, everyone be vigilant about CI signal and keep on developing your 114 features and make sure you have your KEPs in. But that's all from me. I'm Mike, release lead Shadow for 114. Thank you all for hanging out with me at this community meeting.
Thank you, Mike. 114 is shaping up. Next up, we have our Cig updates, and first up is Zach with docs. Zach, I see you're here. You ready to share your screen?
Almost. One moment. Good morning, everyone. Let's see. Can everyone see that okay?
Looks good.
Great. So this is the docs update for just another Thursday. So let's start with what we did last cycle. So Cig Docs had a really busy Q4 and first part of Q1. We released a mature process for localizing docs. That tool chain and that contribution pipeline is pretty solid at this point. So we have debuted Chinese and Korean localizations, and I'm also pleased to announce that as of yesterday, we now have French available on desktop. We're still working on getting it on mobile, but if you go to the desktop site, you can selectively begin receiving content in French. We have changed the docs landing page layout from user journeys to cards. So the user journeys experiment gave us a lot of valuable data, but it wasn't working out. So we have switched to cards, and we would love to hear feedback on that design. And thanks specifically to Andrew Chen or Chenapis. The link for the docs landing page is here, kates.io/docs/home. We released 1.13 docs thanks to Tim Fogarty. And as an update, Andrew Chen has stepped down as a co-chair of Cig Docs. He is moving on to sort of bigger and brighter things at Google. And Jared Bati is returning as co-chair. So I will open a PR to the community repo to make sure that information is updated. Upcoming cycles. So for Q1 and Q2, our big focus is on mentorship and improving content. We'd like to make sure that the content that we have really shines and is maximally helpful to developers. And we're starting to focus on that with I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. We've got a specific project, a repo project up with content available for contributors to focus on. but we're building out a mentorship track right now. Right now, the release process is the only part of Cig Docs that has a really well-defined mentorship track, and we notice that a lot of people are attracted to it consequently. So we want to provide more and better defined tracks for contributors to come into Cig Docs and meaningfully level up. On the subject of improving content, I'm still trying to hire a tech writer to work on the setup section in general, and specifically the picking a right solution page. If you know a tech writer who is awesome and has good open source experience and is looking, please contact me on Slack, Zachary Sarah. I'm happy to receive resumes and recommendations. We have a new French localization. Our Cig charter is in progress. We've gotten good feedback from Aaron Krickenberger and Philip Whiprock, and it has been incorporated. Now we're just waiting on final review. Release 1.14 is in progress. Jim Angel is doing a bang-up job, and I see him following up with placeholder PRs with featured developers. So thank you in advance, everyone who is opening placeholders and getting your docs in early. So for where Cig Docs is interacting with other folks, we have some questions about some interaction. So with Cig Cloud Provider, is Chris Hodge here by chance? Or someone from Cig Cloud Provider?
Hi, I'm here. Andrew.
Okay. Hi, Andrew. So the more that we look at this, the more it looks like it would just be helpful if we could give you a dedicated resource to give you feedback on that template that you're proposing. So if that would be helpful, I guess my question is, would that kind of feedback, just like having a dedicated resource to give you feedback on the template that you're proposing in the KEP, would that be helpful? Yes, no?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the, I haven't had the time I've wanted to devote to documentation. So one of the things that I asked for previously was just if there was someone to be a little more directive and prescriptive of the work that we can do to move that along, that would be helpful for me. So I know that I would find it useful. I don't know how Andrew feels about
it. So I will look for a contributor who can specifically devote that kind of focused attention to it.
Yeah, and in the chat, I posted a PR where I already tried to improve the template that we proposed. And so if even just providing feedback in that PR would be great. And then we can work with whoever going forward to make it better.
Great, thank you. Cig scheduling. We have a contributor who's interested in creating docs for Kubescheduler, but that contributor needs some one-on-one time for an info dump and time for one-on-one questions. There's a link to the issue proposing docs for Kubescheduler. Is there someone from Cig scheduling? Well, okay, so at this point I will just ask if you are from Cig scheduling and you are interested, or if you can boost signal on this, that would be really helpful, and we can get some Kubescheduler docs out the door. I have a question for Cig Contribex. When are the Cig update and deep dive signups opening for Shanghai?
I'm hoping Ihor knows this. Okay, I'll dig it up and post it in the chat.
Awesome, thank you, George. Okay, so on to sub-project status updates. Right now we have sort of one meaningful update for reference docs. We've added a Google Summer of Code project to clean up reference doc generation. Hopefully we get some nibbles on that. Reference doc generation right now is still not as clean as I wish it was, and not as clean as I think it needs to be. So, okay, thank you. Thank you, Jeff. They may very well be CNCF driven. So hopefully we are able to get an intern for Google Summer of Code to help clean up the reference doc generation and polish it. If you are interested in Cig Docs, this is how you can contribute. We have really rockin' get started contributing docs. Docs/contribute on the kates.io/docs/contribute. Like I mentioned earlier, we will have more info about specific mentorship tracks later in Q1. There is always a need for technical review to ensure that concepts and tasks are accurate and up to date. And you can see our content priorities. Here's the link to the GitHub project at Kubernetes/website/project/3. If you see something incorrect in the docs, please open a PR rather than opening an issue. PRs get more attention than issues. We have only so much bandwidth, and it's a lot easier to give feedback and to shepherd a fix through the process than it is to try and diagnose and solve an issue. So let's see, this is where to find us. The best place is on Slack. That's where we're the most active, but here are also links to our repo. To info about Cig Docs. This is our Cig Docs mailing list. And these are our contacts on GitHub and on Slack for myself, Jennifer Rondeau, and Jared Bhatti, the co-chairs of Cig Docs. That is what I have. Any questions?
I don't have a question, but I do want to thank you and also give you mad props. Actually using the community meeting to interact with other SIGs is like the goal, and that was awesome. So thank you. We might actually add that to the template for Cig Updates. Any other questions? All right. Next up, we have Cig Storage with Saad.
Yes.
Saad, are you here?
Yep, I'm here.
Awesome. Share your screen and it's on you.
Share my screen. Okay, can you see that?
Looks good.
All right. Okay. So first off, let's talk about what Cig Storage delivered in the last release, 1.13 Q4. The big highlight item was moving the container storage interface implementation in Kubernetes to GA. This has been a very long project that the Kubernetes storage SIG has been working on for almost a year. If you count the development of the spec, it's more than a year. What is the container storage interface? Why is Kubernetes implementing it? Think of it as an extension mechanism to Kubernetes to allow volume plugins to be added to Kubernetes much more easily. In the past, in order to add a volume plugin to Kubernetes, you had to actually check code into the core of Kubernetes and get it reviewed by the core Cig storage. And it was a pretty painful process. It wasn't good for multiple reasons. Having an actual real extension mechanism where folks can develop volume plugins completely independent of Kubernetes is super valuable. So we're very excited about finally having that move to GA. So that was the big highlight item. Other items that we worked on was moving topology to GA. Topology is a way for volumes to be able to express the kinds of limitations that they have back to the Kubernetes scheduler so that any pods using those volumes can be intelligently scheduled. So if you can imagine volumes that are only accessible by some subset of nodes, you can imagine like a rack or a zone or something like that. Having some mechanism to be able to generically express that to the scheduler is important. So we had that move to GA as well. Another feature is moving raw block volume support to beta. If you're familiar with Kubernetes volumes at all, you've probably been using them as a mounted file system where you have a directory exposed somewhere inside of your container. But there has also been an ask for being able to consume the raw block device that is backing a particular volume. And the use cases here are two use cases. One is databases. Some databases are optimized to work with raw block devices rather than through a file system because they basically have their own implementation. And the second is software-defined storage systems that consume raw block devices and expose a distributed file system of their own. So the support for raw block has finally moved to beta. Next item is generic mount libraries for iSCSI and Fiber Channel. Ideally, what we want is for folks to be able to write their own CSI drivers. But what we realize is that a lot of storage systems are based, they use the SCSI or Fiber Channel protocols in order they're based off of the SCSI or iSCSI or Fiber Channel protocols. And instead of having everybody write their own CSI driver that's slightly different, we decided to offer a set of libraries that folks can use for these specific protocols as a starting point, and then build their own custom functionality, like how the volume provisions and things like that. So that those libraries now exist and can be used to write your own drivers. We also extended Flex volume support. Flex was an older extension mechanism for volume plugins. We decided not to continue investing in that and basically freeze production on it. We're going to keep maintaining it as Cig storage. So if there's any bugs, we'll address them, but we're not going to add any new functionality to it. The last piece of functionality that we did add was volume resizing that went in last quarter, and that's the last feature that we're going to add to Flex. And then finally, lots and lots of CSI drivers have been written. This list is already out of date, but there's well over 20 CSI drivers that I'm aware of, and this is a good measure for us to figure out how successful the project has been, is seeing actual implementations. Next up is what are we working on for this quarter for the 1.14 release. The biggest project is moving in-tree volume plugins to CSI. So a lot of you are probably already familiar with the built-in volume plugins that are baked into Kubernetes for historical reasons. And these include cloud provider volume plugins, including GCE persistent disks, Amazon EBS volumes. Because they are baked into Kubernetes and expose a Kubernetes API, they are the Kubernetes deprecation policy applies, and we can't just delete them. So what we need to do is find a way to be able to remove that code from the core of Kubernetes, have it kind of shim or proxy to an external CSI driver, but have all of that happen invisibly for the end user as far as they're concerned. The existing APIs that they're used to for using these volumes should continue to work. So that work is underway. There's a lot of people in the Cig working on it, and this is going to take multiple quarters. We're hoping to have an alpha implementation of that this quarter. Next is bringing feature parity to CSI. CSI is basically going to be the way that we extend the volume subsystem for Kubernetes. But in order for it to do that, we need to make sure that it has all the features that the in-tree volumes have. And so we're continuing to add functionality to bridge that gap. Specifically, raw block volume support. We want to make sure we are adding it to CSI and moving it along. The CSI version of raw block is currently alpha. We want to move that to beta. Topology, which we discussed, went GA for in-tree volume plugins, is still alpha on the CSI side. We want to move that to beta this quarter. Being able to reference volumes inline is something that CSI did not support. And as CSI expands to be able to support things like local ephemeral volumes, it becomes more important to be able to specify a volume inline in a pod rather than only through a PV/PVC. So we're adding support for that this quarter, and then adding support for volume resizing as well. In addition to that, we are working on drivers that are created by Cig Storage. These are drivers that kind of don't really have an obvious owner outside of Kubernetes maintainers. So we maintain them on behalf of, I guess, the world. So the 4 drivers that we're working on this quarter are an NFS CSI driver, iSCSI CSI driver, a Fiber Channel CSI driver, and then a driver that allows you to use a Docker image as a volume source. So those are underway. And then we have a few designs that we're working on this quarter. One is around secure containers. You've probably heard of gvisor and Kata containers, where they come up with a secure container runtime that makes breaking out of that container much more difficult. we're working with the security team and the node team to come up with a way to secure volumes used by such containers to prevent breakout. We're also looking into redoing the volume attach limits feature. So this is a mechanism by which a volume plugin can advertise what are the maximum number of volumes that I support per node. This is a limitation that a lot of storage systems have. The way that we have it designed right now is not very flexible to handle CSI, so we're redoing that design. And then we have a number of testing efforts underway to continue to make sure that this layer is rock solid. One is around scalability testing. If you are familiar with the Kubernetes scalability tests, you may know that the existing tests are entirely stateless. They don't take stateful workloads into account. And we want to change that and make sure that we are also exercising the volume subsystem as part of those scalability tests. So we're working with Cig Scalability on that. Second is a pluggable end-to-end test framework. So a lot of the volume tests that we have used to be per volume plugin, and that didn't really make sense. What we wanted to do was move away from a set of custom tests for each volume plugin to a system where you have a set of tests that can work with any volume plugin, whether that's Entry or a CSI driver. And we're getting closer and closer to making that a reality. And it makes it much easier to be able to test more extensively. And finally, Kubernetes conformance is something we've been working on for a while. For this quarter, we're going to have a set of tests that we're going to kind of hope to promote to Kubernetes conformance in the future. But we're identifying what those tests are and creating a validation suite for now. And then next steps would be to figure out how that'll fit into the rest of Kubernetes conformance. So that's what Cig Storage is working on for this release. If you are interested in getting involved, we have meetings every 2 weeks. We just had one at 9 a.m. today, 1 hour ago. Feel free to follow the link here to find all the information about that, as well as the meeting notes. We have a very active Slack channel, so if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us there or on the mailing list. And that is all that I have.
Awesome. Thank you, Saad. Does anyone have any other questions? All right, if you do, I'm sure you can find Saad in Slack. Finally, we have our announcements. First up, there is an update on Slack. We are only manually inviting contributors who need access for now until we hear from Slack HQ. If you are a Cig and have a member that needs access, ping in the hashtag Slack-admins channel, and an admin will DM you for the email. Consumer traffic is currently being routed to Discuss. The URL is discuss.kubernetes.io. The KubeCon Shanghai CFP ends 11:59 p.m. Pacific time, February 22nd, 2019. And last but not least, we have our shout-outs. So first up, Nikita figured that this would make a good shout-out too, at SpiffXP and at pwhitrock. There was a lovely tweet that I need to pull up so that everyone can see because it was really good. Let me share my screen because I feel like everyone needs a little bit of joy in their life. Instead of building walls, we should be having barbecues. And then Aaron requested the highs to 5s. I would agree with that, and that was another reason why I feel like having the community meeting be a cross-Cig conversation is a fantastic idea. Next up, we have DB Hanushali. I am sorry with names. In no particular order, Sen, Amit, Cole, Jeff, and Ben shout out for their assistance in test info release task automation. SpiffXP shout outs to at Code Ranger, at Mr. Bobby Tables, at KBernard10 for putting together and posting the CVE blog so quickly, the blog post on the latest CVE. Nikita gives a shout out to at Mr. Bobby Tables and at Just Augustus for handling the new member requests in KORG in such a timely manner. It feels like there are at least 4 to 5 requests a day, and they still manage to get each of them while simultaneously doing things for the community. I would agree. They are very, very quick to respond. At Paris thanks me for hosting this call in her absence at the last minute, and I am a true team player. I just like helping out. And Mr. Bobby Tables wants to shout out to at Zachary Sarah, Cig Docs, and everyone involved in kickstarting the French translation efforts. At CBen, at Arlene Perrier, at LLEDRU, at YastJ, at Asmana, at Arbenzer, and at Jean-Yves Gastad, and others I don't have Slack handles for, but here's the GitHub, their GitHub handles. Yes, thank you so much. It's good to see that we're getting more translations on the docs. With that, if anyone has anything else to discuss, let me know. Otherwise, I will be releasing everyone and giving everyone back about 18 minutes of their time. All right. Happy Thursday, everybody. Thank you for coming.